Hi, this is Scott Fish. Welcome to part 3 of my 4-part February 28th, 1983 interview with Jimmy Webb. We cover a lot of ground in this segment, and again, it picks up where the last segment left off, literally, me changing tapes while the conversation continued, so we kind of jump in at the beginning here. But some very good stories here. Jimmy talking about Ringo recording drums on Jimmy's Land's End album, and how the producer was just driving Ringo up the wall, days and days of trying to get an alleged good drum sound. And that's a great story. Talk about Angel Heart being recorded in 3 to 4 days, with Toto being the backup band, if you will, on that album, which at the time of this interview is Jimmy's latest album. And we talk a lot about the changing record industry and the distribution and how record companies have gotten, at the time of this interview, much more reluctant to spend money on albums and spend money on promotions and devote more time to the grooming of artists or bands. That if an initial album sold, let's say 100,000 copies, that was okay. And they would continue working with the band, and next album would be 200,000 perhaps. But all that's changed. And again, this is pre-digital music here, but you'll hear Jimmy and I coming up with, something's wrong. Something has changed with the record industry, the music industry. He says at one point, it seems we're at the end of an era. A lot of great careers are seemingly past their prime and leveling out. I feel a hush for another great boon of some kind. And so we kick around different ways that artists like Jimmy can really take control of marketing their own music, their own albums. How would they go about doing that? It's not quite as obvious when we're talking about pre-digital, but that something could and should be done is pretty obvious. So that's kind of where this segment goes. There's some very good discussion here about what Jimmy thinks in his mind is what he calls the epitome of his philosophy of what it actually takes to be a songwriter and a composer. So a lot of good stuff in here. And again, thank you for listening.
I'm in London, and Ringo brought in his drum set. I was really excited because he brought in the drums that he played Sgt. Pepper on. This whole old drum set was there, and we had an engineer. I won't mention his name. We're working with an engineer who was having some trouble with his hearing. I'll just put it that way. And he had Ringo tuning these drums, I think, for 2 days. He had him just kept hitting the drums and hitting the drums. He just seemed to get, tired and more frustrated with the fact that he couldn't play. We weren't playing anything. He just kept hitting these drums, and then finally he said, well, you get the assistant engineer to hit the drums, because I'm not going to hit the drums anymore. And so then the assistant engineer went out and started hitting the drums. And he hit the drums for a couple of days. This is a real strange creative process we were involved in. And then I think, the third day or something, we finally got around to playing. We started playing, and Ringo was playing great. He was playing wonderful.
Yeah.
He was playing with him and Nigel Olsson.
Together?
Yeah.
Wow.
And it sounded really great. The engineer kept complaining about, the engineer-producer kept complaining about the drum sound. And I think finally we got a take. But Ringo I heard later from Harry that Ringo was so frustrated by this that he took these great drums that he had played all these records on, and he put them in the back of a garage somewhere, and he didn't play for like a year. I've always felt really terrible about that I was involved in that much frustration for the guy that he would actually retire a drum set, even temporarily, you know. But those are some of the things that happen when and it's kind of typical of the whole era of recording that we went through, mm-hmm. where the search for perfection became more important than the actual performing of the music, when the medium became more important than the message.
Yeah, now they try to get all the drummers are supposed to sound the same, you know, all the drum sounds. Oh, man. That's one of Keltner's. He goes crazy when he talks about, you know, gets into that. Picaro, we just ran an interview on him, and he said that you guys did an album in 3 days. Was that Angel Heart? Or?
Yeah, we did a lot of Angel Heart in 3 days or 4 days. Yeah.
Yeah, which is amazing because the production on that is like it was all live. All the guys in the studio.
Yeah. Yeah, that was Matthew McCauley and Fred Mullen.
Yeah.
They also produced the Leah Kunkel album that you're talking about.
Is that right?
And they also produced Dan Hill and that big album that Dan Hill had. And several. Great.
Yeah. Do you like to record that way rather than be laboring?
Oh yeah, I could never work like that again. Even though I was the worst. Mm-hmm. I mean,
as far as wanting perfection and that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember one time I went 68 takes on a basic track for Thelma Houston, and the next day I was called into Dunhill Records. I was literally called on the carpet in Jay Lasker's office, and Armin Steiner was there, sort of as a witness to what I had done.
Against you or with you?
Basically against me. I don't hold it against him, but if you're out there, Armin, don't worry about it. But they definitely gave me a lecture.
Yeah.
And, because these were the days when $90,000 on an album was
nothing.
It was something that you expected to spend.
Steiner's from the days when they used to stick 2 microphones up over an office.
Yeah. Oh yeah. He was really the best engineer I've ever worked with, and especially as far as string sound was concerned.
Yeah.
Because he was an ex-violinist.
Yeah.
And he knew strings better than anybody, and he got more out of a band with minimum of deployment of microphones and stuff. Mm. Because he really understood the way instruments sound.
Yeah.
And how to work with them.
There's not many engineers that know how to do that.
But in those days, the idea was almost to see who could spend the most money on an album, It was a form of promotion. Hey, this is $100,000 album. Let's go buy it. And next week, there'd be a $150,000 album, and that's what everybody wanted to hear, was whichever album cost the most money.
What was the budget on the Richard Harris one? Train of Shining.
I don't know. I think we spent maybe $60,000, $70,000 on it.
Was that pretty fast to do?
Yeah, because we were working with Armin, and well, we did MacArthur Park in one take. I mean, we knew it, and we rehearsed it all afternoon.
Strings and everything.
No, basic. Mm-hmm. We did the rhythm track, and we did it straight through.
Yeah. You've gone from the albums to, if you look at a Tramp Shining, we did writing, arranging, producing, and it seems to be like less of an involvement over the progression of albums with that stuff.
Well, I started producing my own albums, and when my own albums didn't get to be real big smash platinum hits, I think the demand for me as a producer began to decline somewhat.
Yeah.
But I don't know. I still like to produce. I'd like to produce. I still think I can.
Mm-hmm.
But really, I have to stick to the basics. I have to stick to the bread and butter for me is writing songs and getting them recorded.
So on Angel Heart, you didn't choose the musicians, the guys you were going to work with?
Yeah. I mean, I'm involved in that process.
Yeah.
But all those guys are friends of mine. I mean, I wouldn't pick anyone else anyway.
Yeah.
I love the way Jeff plays, and I told you that David Page and I go back a long way, and
that's funny, man. 12-year-old kid.
It's like they are so good, and we like each other so much that there's hardly any reason to go anywhere else.
Mm-hmm.
They've done tremendous work for me. The energy that they put into it, it's like they're working on their own record, and that you can't buy.
Yeah,
there's no price on that kind of involvement, and commitment, and loyalty.
Mm-hmm. I think probably one of the last things I was thinking that I thought was interesting was that something you'd made a comment about looking at using the Bible, the language of the Bible, as inspiration, or something about not illustrations. What's the word I'm looking for?
Imagery.
Imagery. There you go.
Well, the Bible is full of glorious language.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to look a long way to find literature that paints the kind of pictures that are painted there.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes in very few words, a very vivid image is created.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an economic use of language, but the result that it achieves is very evocative and vivid and deep.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's one of the things that you strive for in a lyric, is that you and in fact it's not only that, it's very necessary when you're dealing with a 2.5 verse or a 3 verse or song, 3-minute song, that you have to create a lot of image, and you don't have a lot of time to do it. You have to say a lot in a very short length of time. So one of the things that you can learn from the Bible is that by carefully choosing the words that you pick, that you want to employ, that you can say a lot more. Maybe you can say more using fewer words than you can if you use a lot of words sometimes. Maybe by using a lot of words, you actually say less.
Like haiku or something.
Yeah.
I was trying to figure out, like in the book of John that you mentioned, I was rereading that book. That gets exciting,
Yeah.
What in the world is this guy talking about?
Are you talking about Revelation?
Yeah. Well, there's letters that he has in there, too. I was trying to figure that out, whether you were referring to the letters that he wrote or the book.
Well, I can't remember what I said, but
what was the tune on Angel Heart? Work for $1.
Mama used to love that book of John.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I was talking about the book of John.
Just Revelations. It's not.
What's it called in the Bible? Is it John?
It's just John.
Yeah, the book of John.
What is it? Pull it out.
Yeah.
Really?
You want Angel Heart?
No, I got the Bible in there. I was just trying to figure it out. I said, I got to check this out.
In here?
I just happen to have a Bible with me.
Yeah.
I always carry it in that bag. I'm sorry. I got it in a college class, and it was the only thing left. I never got.
Excuse me, just a
Sure, Drew.
straighten out.
Go ahead.
Some people, when they're writing tunes these days, they stop short because they're afraid to go a little further than this tune. creative going.
Hang gliding and songwriting.
Maybe being considered too esoteric, or maybe people won't understand it, so they stop short. They put a break on the creativity in order to make it more commercially viable.
Well, recently I was involved in a project for CBS. I wrote a weekly television series called 7 Brides for 7 Brothers. And I was essentially writing a song a week. So that was an interesting exercise for me. It was good practice. I wrote songs about everything from, I wrote a song about chili. I wrote a song about
the food or the country?
Yeah, the food. I wrote a song about a baby. I wrote a song about politics. I wrote a song about a mountain lion.
Mm-hmm.
These were really like off-the-wall projects, each one totally different and very challenging. I found that was very good for my muscles, my writing muscles.
Mm-hmm.
And also this last year I had a animated feature out called The Last Unicorn.
Mm-hmm.
Did 5 songs for that, and the underscore.
Is that out? That's an album. Did they release a soundtrack from that?
Not yet. I think maybe if it's re-released this Easter, probably there'll be a soundtrack with it. I had 2 songs on Linda Ronstadt's album. I had one on Waylon and Willie's WW2.
Did you?
Yeah.
Which
Mr. Shuck and Jive.
Mm-hmm.
I had another one on the Glenn Campbell album. So at one point during this last year, I was very, very happy because what I had done, it's a goal of mine, and I had finally accomplished it. I was actually in 3 mediums. I was on record, and I was on television, and I was in theaters at the same time. And for me, that's what I'd like to do again this year. That's really the epitome, I guess, of my philosophy of what it actually takes to be a songwriter, a songwriter and a composer, is to actually be active in every possible medium simultaneously.
Mm-hmm. How about commercials? Would you do that?
I would do it. There's a problem with commercials for me in that we don't get paid performances for commercials. So you get paid a flat fee, and then say if the commercial runs for 2 or 3 years, maybe you have an escalating deal where annually you get another amount of money.
Mm-hmm.
But there's no way it could ever compare to the amount of times that music is used on the air.
Is that right?
And we don't get paid for that. Also, there's an advertising agency will not come to you and say, we want a commercial for these potato chips, and we'll let you write as many versions of this commercial as is necessary until we come up with the one that we want.
Mm-hmm.
What they want to do is pitch you against another songwriter. So they want 3 or 4 guys to write different things, and then they want to pick.
Wow.
Well, I object to that. I don't like it. I feel like that I've paid my dues as a songwriter.
Yeah.
And that I can do anything they want me to do.
Right.
But I object to every time I go in on a commercial job, being in a competitive atmosphere with some other songwriter.
Now, would they pay you anyway, even if they picked Joe Blow or something?
No.
Huh. So a little incentive there to do commercials. That's pretty horrible.
I don't think there's much incentive for someone like me.
Yeah.
Because I have a better chance of getting a song recorded by Linda Ronstadt than I do or at least an equal chance.
Mm-hmm.
So why should I put the energy on a commercial? I might as well write a song for Linda or or Joe Cocker or Jennifer Warren or someone, and I run the same risk of being rejected. If they came to me and said, we want you to write this commercial, we know you can do it, and then I would write the commercial and they would say, that's not it, we want something else, and I would try something else. But I would have to have some kind of assurance that it was my job, it was my work, that eventually I'd be paid for it.
Yeah. How was it? It must have been fun doing the children's choir down there.
Oh yeah,
Christmas
that's one of the most rewarding things I've ever done, really.
I'm sorry I missed that. We were going to try to come up and see that concert.
Have you got a tape?
Is that a long time rehearsing with the kids? It must
I
have been
started
gas,
in September.
Yeah.
Started in September, and we performed it on December 18th.
Yeah. I heard it was beautiful. Yeah. A couple of people here saw it.
It seems to me like that this interview has been really negative. It seems like all I've been talking about is like how down the business
Well,
is.
you'll get a chance to see it before.
How many difficulties I have in this terrible job of mine as a songwriter and all this stuff.
Well, I think it's funny. I mean, when someone like me looks at someone in the songwriting position as you're in, I think the general consensus is that, geez, there's a guy that, if he wanted to go out touring, no sweat. You know what I mean? Like, things are pretty... There's so many doors that are open now that weren't open when you were just starting out, that it wouldn't be that difficult. And then talking to you, it seems...
The problem is still, when you make one of these things,
yeah,
you're dealing with a company that lives in a big building. It's about 50 stories high. And unless you could depend on every person in that building being a Jimmy Webb fan and just being delighted that you're on the label, and be confident that they have as much faith in you as you have in yourself, and the odds are very, very slim, then you have difficulties. You're not. You're dealing with so much potential friction and negative reaction.
What about doing your own records?
35 promotion guys in some city or somewhere who says, Jimmy Webb, And this is what you run into,
Yeah, but I would think that, I mean, the ticket in any business is really to get as many people on your team as you can that are people that are empathetic with what you're trying to do. You know what I'm saying?
True.
And you want to sit in a different chair? You want a hard
No,
chair,
it's not the chair.
Want to lay down on the floor?
That's okay.
Hang upside down. And I'm just surprised it's a challenge,
Well, like I said, if I was going to do it again, I would do it take a very simple approach.
Yeah.
I would be confident that the label I was associated with really wanted me, really believed in me, really thought I could do it. Yeah, but that's a tall order because, like I said, there's a lot of people that you're dealing with. So even if you said half of the people in this company really think this is a great idea, you're still talking about half of the company that they're kind of lukewarm on the subject. They don't. So that's a tall order.
What if you did?
You've got to have a label who's absolutely 100% behind you and believes that you can do it.
What if you did your own?
Well, I paid for Angel Heart.
Yeah.
But somebody still makes these things, and they either put them in the stores or they don't put them in the stores. They
selling them.
They either stick with you for a whole year, knowing that it's a work of art, and that in the long run, that the intrinsic merits of it will win out. That's another problem we have today. They don't have a year to give you. They can't stick with you for a year like they did on Carole King's Tapestry.
Yeah.
They don't have a year.
Why?
Because of the money situation, and because they need hits right now, because they don't want to, it's inefficient for them to spend time on something that isn't selling at a very high rate. This huge company, all these salaries going out, and it's hard for them to justify working on an album that isn't an immediate smash, that isn't immediately selling hundreds of thousands of copies. I don't think there was a time when a record company would have worked an artist and been happy to sell 100,000 records and said, we've got something now we can build on.
Yeah.
Next year we'll release an album and we'll sell 200,000 or 250. We're not going to set our goals too high. We're going to build this artist.
Right.
We're going to build his following. We're going to cater to this 100,000 people or 150,000 people who bought the Jimmy Webb album. We're going to build on this. I don't believe today that they care whether they sell 100,000 albums or not.
Well, why can't a guy do that himself? I mean, I might be real naive in asking that, but in other words, there's a challenge with.
I've been thinking about it.
In other words, if you did your own record, your own label,
you still need airplay.
Yeah.
You need airplay to sell albums. But you have to sell albums to get airplay.
But if you took them, there are guys, if you took them on the road, if you took albums on the road and sold them, it would show up in the charts. Albums. So that's what Maynard Ferguson does. That's why his albums show up so high on the charts that he's just because he.
Well, looking at it realistically, if I went into the bitter end and played for a week and sold my albums by the front door, maybe I'd sell 1,000 albums in a week. It's nothing. It's just not. It just
Chuck
doesn't
Mangione
mean
did
anything.
that, man. Chuck Mangione did that for years and years.
Well, I remember gospel quartets doing that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
It's the Oklahoma City Civic Auditorium, a lobby full of albums and hymn books and things like that.
Yeah, it's not a new idea, But I mean, it would seem to me like, it's not. It might be a couple of steps backwards, but I wonder if it wouldn't, in the long run, be more beneficial than trying to work within the confines of a Warner Brothers or a CBS or something like that,
I think that there's a definite trend now to go around, if there's a way to get around them, and do it some other way and seek an alternate way of selling albums. That I'm not the only person who's thinking about that right now and wondering how would I do it, and weighing the possibilities of just eliminating the record company from the process completely and saying there are too many problems here.
Right.
The odds are too high. There's too many problems for them. Too many problems for me.
Right.
What are the alternatives? And there must be some other alternatives besides selling albums in the lobby at your concerts. I think that maybe the time has come for an artist to have, once again, when one artist should have it, an artist could have his own label.
Yeah.
And sell by mail and sell in person. And
like Elvis's first record, right? Yeah.
And just go back to the roots of this whole business before it became so complex and so hard to understand and hard to control.
Yeah. And then by working that way, when the action started to happen, then probably the bigger labels would have more of an interest. See?
Yeah, I think they probably would.
And then you'd be an artist would be in a much better bargaining position with a major record company at that point, But so many of those guys are so stupid in the recording industry. It's incredible. Talking to them, and I talked to some of these guys, and
Is that going to be part of the interview?
my quote, my swan song interview, right? Oh, you're the guy that said there's so many stupid people in the record industry, But no, because I have a lot of love for the business because it's something that I've been involved with for years, and since I was like 13 years old, and it's I talk with people that are just so stupid, or an album will come out like going back to Gordon Lightfoot, we sat down with him a few times, and that guy's like pulling his hair out because he's like, what's the matter with me, man? I used to have so many great, and he's written some beautiful stuff, and if I hear his albums, and I'll put them on, and I'll find a couple of tunes, I'll say, man, this is a really pretty tune, and then Warner Brothers or whatever, if they'll release anything, they're trying to get another Sundown from Gordon, which was, I guess, like his biggest selling hit. But to me, his ballads have always been his real, if you could read my mind.
It has to be said that that kind of music is not selling like it used to.
But he still has a following.
And
he can still fill Saratoga Springs.
Sure. Well, then he's a guy who should start his own label. But, for instance, Linda Ronstadt's album, they expected platinum sales.
Yeah.
The album went gold, but all the retailers and rack jobbers around the country were saying this album isn't selling the way it should be selling.
Mm-hmm.
That's not their fault. That's not the record company's fault. There really is something going on between the consumer and the artist now that maybe we don't understand completely.
Think videos?
I don't. People say that. People say video, and they say Pac-Man, and they say blank tape, and they say you hear a lot of buzzwords.
Mm.
What if it's deeper than that, though? What if it's just what if it's analogous to the disenchantment of the American teenager in the mid-50s with all the music of his parents and all the things that his parents stood for, and all the things that his parents liked, no matter how great they were, and just a desire to junk all of that and do something else. It seems to me that we have come to the end of an era now when a lot of great careers have really passed their zenith and moved into, I'm not saying they plunged into oblivion, but still, a lot of great careers are seemingly past their prime and kind of leveling out, as though some great breathing mechanism has taken in a breath and let it out, and now they're ready for another breath, a breath of something else. That's the way I feel. I feel a kind of a hush, a kind of a calm before another great
boom
of some kind.
I think TV's affected the audiences a whole lot in a negative way, because it seems like kids aren't. I see it like in letters, that I get across the desk every day from kids. Man, it's kids that are. If you throw something at them in a song, in the '60s and stuff, the thing was to sit with the headphones and let's check out the lyrics, and this kind of thing. And now, yeah, exactly. And they don't read, and there's a whole part of your brain that if your education level has been sitting in front of the TV set using the front half of your head only, then if somebody's giving you a piece of art, you have to sit down and use a little imagination and pay attention and concentrate. They can't do it, and they can't. I run into kids. This is the rule rather than the exception, that have trouble reading a book because they can't retain a sentence. They can't follow a thought pattern and stuff. And I think that's having a bigger effect on music than people realize.
I think you're probably right. And I think that's part of it, and I think that it's more than that. I think it's that, and it's other things that we don't even know about, that we